All right, the big hand is on the 12 and the little hand is on the 9. It's January the 10th in the year of our Lord 2021. It's 34 degrees outside, so it must be time for
Good morning, Good Shepherd.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us this morning. We've had some issues the last couple of weeks with our technology and everything, but today we have a new encoder. And everybody says, what's an encoder? Well, and I look at an encoder like I do prayer. When we have corporate prayer in the Church of the Good Shepherd, everybody's praying, and it's all going up to God in heaven. That's a lot of stuff at once. So what an encoder does is take all the things going here with the audio and the visual stuff, it compresses it, and it streams it out rapidly to all of y'all out there in TV land. So welcome, glad you're here. This is a super duper special Good Morning Good Shepherd. Probably the most super duper special one we've had since we started this in March. Because we've got our new interim rector and his beautiful child bride, Allison. Ted Clarkson and Allison are Augusta natives, and they're coming to us from Darien now. So we want to welcome Ted and Allison, and we want to do a little ceremony here, it's kind of like a baton passing in a race. It's called the passing of the keys. Now, there are a lot of keys to all the buildings in Good Shepherd. Our senior warden, John McCullen, has 2 symbolic keys, but I don't know how many keys there are and how many doors, but there's a lot of doors and rooms at Good Shepherd. It's kind of like what Jesus says, I'm going up there and I'm going to prepare a place for you because in my Father's house there are many rooms. Well, in the Good Shepherd and EDS house, there's a lot of rooms. There are rooms I didn't even know existed till I kind of took over for the last couple of weeks. And so Ted will get those big, massive numbers of keys, but this morning, Senior Warden John McCullum is going to pass those off to him, which are just 2 big old keys, look like ancient keys to a big door somewhere in a cathedral. John is the senior warden. John, what is a senior warden? Tell these folks out there. They say, a senior warden, what is that?
You know, I'm really not sure, Joe. I just know Robert called me about 1.5 years ago and asked me to do something, and, you know, we never can tell Robert no, so here I am.
Yeah, the senior warden is selected, not elected, and selected by the rector, where the junior warden and the other members of the vestry are elected. And the senior warden is the rector's confidant, sounding board, hopefully somebody that will tell him, Robert, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. Don't do it. Someone that can give him feedback and everything. Now, John, what's your term now?
So I'm in my 2nd year.
Okay.
And so, yeah, last year was my 1st year, and so here we are.
Well, I certainly hope that you're going to stay on for that full term.
No, he doesn't get paroled for another year. The sentence stands.
Well, interesting that Ted should say that. Many of you probably know it or don't know it, but before Ted got the call from Jesus to become a priest in the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, he was an attorney in Augusta. And that was how many years ago was that?
That was 17 years ago that I left the practice.
17. So he brings a unique perspective to the priesthood. There's a lot of folks that come into the priesthood in their, shall I say, more mature times of their life from other professions. I came in from surgery. Bunny, our dear public health advocate, came in from nursing. She has a PhD in public health and nursing. And she was a nurse with me in the old Tannage Memorial Hospital. a few years ago. She was a student nurse, and that's where we first met and established a lifelong friendship that just gets better all the time now that we're co-priests serving the Church of the Good Shepherd. Well, I guess it's time. John,
Okay.
will you pass the keys?
Yep.
All right, sir.
So I guess it was about 60 days ago. Robert gave me these keys, and I actually tried to give them back. He wouldn't take them. It was a sad occasion. We miss
Yeah.
Robert, but we're excited to have you and Allison here, back in Augusta, back at Good Shepherd, to lead us with our next chapter. And so it's my privilege to present on behalf of the parishioners of Good Shepherd the keys to the kingdom.
Well, thank you. It is incredibly momentous to me on so many different levels, having grown up here, being a member of Good Shepherd for 45 years, actually, before I went off to seminary. So this is truly home, and I am awed by the responsibility and excited by it at the same time.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah. Everybody, pretend like there's 1,000 people here. Well, John's going to leave us, and Bunny's going to come in and stand in his place. Well, actually, nobody can take your place, John, but Bun's going to come in here and going to chit-chat a little bit. And since it's been a long, long time since Ted and Allison have been here, we just kind of catch up with them a little bit. And Ted's coming in and Allison's coming into the church in a most difficult time. But I assure you that they have the skill, the commitment, the loyalty, and the wherewithal to kind of just guide us through this most difficult time in the church. I mean, this is unlike anything that's ever happened in the church. I don't know if you can compare it to the Dark Ages and the Black Plague and all those sorts of things. Maybe so, but this is a different experience for all of us. Now, Sissy and I were talking about y'all this morning, and first memories of you. And by the way, I wouldn't be sitting here in this chair if it hadn't have been for one Alan Boynton, who was, I would typify Father Clarkson, Ted, as the Hound of Heaven.
I've heard that description before.
He was an apostle, he was a pastor, but he was out in the boondocks looking for lost souls on the highway of life. And he ran into me on that highway one day and brought me...
He was in the real back corner of the boondocks. Wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I said, how in the world did you find this? He was an interesting way. His evangelism was very interesting. We had a softball team here, and the Baptist, he recruited Baptists to play on it because the Episcopalians weren't very good, I think, or something like that.
This is true.
And I was a Baptist at the time, but that's when I first met him. And then he started knocking on my door in odd times and inviting me to church. And then if you come here, the next thing you know, he gives you something to do.
Right.
And the next thing you know, you get something else to do. And we established a wonderful friendship. I guess I met him in 75 and he retired in 79. 79. But so I had 4 good years with him. And so now, what a privilege it is to serve and work with the bookend, I guess, of this with Ted. Anyway, Sissy and I were talking, Allison, and she says, oh, I remember such a sweet couple they were. And they always walked around holding hands. And this is what, many years ago?
This dates back to 1973.
73, when y'all first started dating?
Yes.
Yep, okay. And I guess...
That's 47 years ago.
I was trying to do the math in my head. Thank you for doing that. 47 years ago. And wonderful children who are also seeking their own...
yeah, why don't y'all
tell us about the kids.
Tell us about your family first.
Yeah.
Allison, I'll let you go first on that. About the...
Well, as you know, Ted has just been ordained to the diaconate. He will go home to a church in Fort Worth, Texas. Rob is living in Darien and enjoying his life by the water and all the sports and everything that goes with that. Alan is married, and he and his wife Allison live in Marietta, and he's a high school biology teacher, or teaches whatever science is necessary at that time. So he's living up there, and they're all doing their own thing, and it's a wonderful thing for us. So
Yeah, now y'all are like empty nesters, isn't that?
Yes, we are empty nesters. I say that with a certain amount of, I shouldn't really say joy, should I?
Yes, you should.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
You can just have a deep breath.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people might like to know what it was that made you decide, after being in law for so long, what led, I mean, I know it's the call, that sort of thing, but how did you experience deciding to make that change? And Allison, the question that follow up is, are you kidding me when he told you?
Well, many of, as this has been alluded to, and many of you all know, my father was the rector here for 37 years. And when I was 13 years old, for some reason I had some minor thought about what I might do with my life. And my father said, you only should enter the ministry if there is nothing else that you feel called to do. If there's anything else that you feel called to do, then the ministry is not for you. And I said, thank you. I know that I've several other things I feel called to do, and I can cross this off my list. And
Thank you for giving me permission.
that's right. And it was nearly 30 years later, not having given a single thought to ordained ministry. Been very active here, been part of the church, but as a layperson. And Steph Britt made the comment, because we knew that my son was off to look at colleges, my oldest son, Ted, who, by the way, many people thought was going to go into the ministry from the time he was about 10 years old.
Yes.
That was clear.
Mr. Nord probably helped with some
Yes,
of that.
Mr. Nord has some responsibility for that, along with some others. But in any event, Steph Britt, the assistant here at the time, told my sister Florrie, and then told Allison, because I think Florrie just ignored it. For those who don't know, Florrie Dickert is my sister.
I've already warned them that not
Yes.
to talk bad about you to her.
Okay. Oh, she'd believe it. But in any event, make a long story short, Steph said that I should go to Sewanee to look at schools also. And truth of the matter is, and clearly what he was referring to was seminary.
Yes.
And I had not even given it a thought.
Wow.
And we went up there. It was for lessons and carols with a group of Good Shepherd people, Betty Snellings and some others. We had a van full of people. And I can say nothing else than I heard a call into the ministry.
Wow.
And prayed about it, talked about it to Robert, and then talked about Steph, and then ultimately with the bishop. And then about a year and a half later, because of the way the cycle works, and people don't know it in the Episcopal Church, you don't just decide to go off to seminary. There is a process,
A long and arduous
long and
process.
arduous process involved. And then a year and a half later, Alice and I were heading off to Sewanee. I'll better let Allison speak for herself as to her reaction.
Yeah, how did you expect it at all? And like my kid said to me, Mom, we knew this was going to happen. So, I mean, did you expect it?
no, I was surprised. I knew that there was something there. I knew that we needed to see the process through and see if that was what he was called to do, and it was. And it's been the right thing all along. It just, you have to see it through. It just all's gone very well.
Was
We've
it
done
hard
very
for
well.
y'all adjusting from being here settled? Your husband's
It took
an
a while to
attorney
get
and-
settled to Sewanee, and After about 6 months, we thought we probably would stay there forever. We loved it so much. And after 3 years, as they say, they kick you off the mountain, and we went to Darien, and that's where we've been since then. And it's been a real true adventure. You know, you do it together.
Yeah.
And it is truly the right thing for him, and we're making it work.
That's wonderful.
And it has worked beautifully. And tell us a little bit how that worked, because as we have gone to seminary from entirely different careers, long-term careers, you get out and then you say, now what? I had thought that I would ease out of surgery because I was I was 62 when I got ordained. And then, I've always been in the church because of my mama. She drugged me there, kind of like your daddy. He drugged me. I've had all these people dragging me into church. Why is that?
They knew
I
you
can't imagine
needed it.
why that is.
It's called training.
And so I had planned to ease into the ordained ministry, and as it turned out, I was what you call, I guess, bivocational. I was able to do both things, and didn't retire from surgery until last year, and still going full blast with, and have had many, many wonderful experiences as a priest and everything. So I have had my cake and eaten it too. Ted gave it up. I mean, he walked away from the law, and I probably never looked back at all. And so, so that's two different ways of doing it. And in the Episcopal Church, you can have bivocational ministers, folks that that do one thing and then do the other thing. And I've been able to do it both. And so, but Ted went to a place where there's not one church, but two churches.
Yes.
So he had two wonderful churches, and I know so many of the people in those churches, and they are wonderful, wonderful people. But tell us a little bit about the churches of Darien.
Darien, first thing is, many people would know where Darien is, but many do not. It's a small fishing village halfway between Savannah and Jacksonville, about 15 miles north of Brunswick, Georgia. I say it's a fishing village because that's about the only real economic activity in the entire county. I do believe that McIntosh County is the last undeveloped county on the eastern seaboard. People think of the coast and they think of busyness and tourists and everything like that. And when we moved there, the Georgia Department of Labor said that the largest private employer was the Ruby Tuesdays restaurant at the interstate, to give you an idea of the...
Well, at least y'all had a restaurant.
We did, because they have an interstate going through. And they had, although it's closed now, it's failed. They still have a McDonald's and a KFC and a Burger King.
Well.
There are actually some seafood restaurants in Darien. That's one of the other...
Yeah, wonderful.
That's
Very
one of the
good.
very few areas of economic activity other than fishing. Interestingly, the two churches are, they've been there a long time. 1841 that St. Andrews was organized. And then after the Civil War, one of the large plantations in the area, the daughter came to help run. Her father, who'd owned the plantation, was a ne'er-do-well that we don't want to speak of too terribly much. There's some interesting history. And her mother was actually a British actress who'd been married to the plantation owner, whose name was Pierce Butler, and her name was Fanny Kimball. And Fanny Kimball was disgusted with the life of slavery that she encountered on the Georgia coast, and actually wrote one of the very influential texts in support of abolition back in England. In any event, her daughter came with her husband to help look after the property after the Civil War, and her husband happened to be the dean of Herefordshire Cathedral in England. And he started holding services for the freed slaves, particularly on Butler Island, and then later in McIntosh County. And the daughter gave the land Her husband raised the money, both in the North and in England, and they built St. Cyprian's Episcopal Church, which was consecrated in 1876 for the freed slaves of McIntosh County. And those churches, it was not a mission of St. Andrews. They're only a block apart.
That's right.
And it's not that there was an antagonistic relationship at all, but they were independent. Sometimes you see that a church one church starts another one, but that's not the case here. And they have existed independently. St. Cyprian's and St. Andrews have both, for much of their history, were missions, not able to fully support themselves. But they prospered. Right now, can't say that too many. If you count the two churches together, because today I would call them a church and a half. They are independent. They have separate vestries, but all the ministries are combined, and they're a block apart. And we have a parish house that we share between the two. And actually, we have more people prior to COVID, we had more people in church on a Sunday morning in the Episcopal churches than in the Methodist church or the Presbyterian church. And that's
Wow.
probably not too often said in the South.
That is unique.
Yeah, I don't know, completely unique, but the Episcopal churches played a very important role in McIntosh County long before I got there, but we've continued. And they're both two very, very special places. McIntosh County is a poor county. The people at the Episcopal Church are not overly endowed with resources, but it's amazing what they have accomplished over the years and they're continuing to do, and made it a lot of fun. They were happy when I got there and I didn't screw them up. That's the way I left them. I left them happy
Left
too.
them alone.
Well, we hope that will continue here at Good Shepherd.
Pardon with my expression there, but that's the best way to explain it. And we were very fortunate to go into a place that was happy when we got there. It much like Good Shepherd, excuse me, much like Good Shepherd now, is a happy, vital place at an entirely different scale than Darien,
Right.
entirely different
Mhm.
scale. But it is a blessing to both Allison and myself that we have served in places that were happy and were functioning and were doing God's work in their communities in their own way.
And it makes it easier to serve a church when people are happy and loving to each other. Ted, you might explain exactly what a mission church is. Some people may not
All right.
know.
It actually, the distinction doesn't exist anymore,
Right.
but
Right.
up until a few years ago, if a Episcopal church could support a full-time clergy person over several years, they were deemed a parish. And as a parish, they have a great deal of independence from the diocesan structure. An Episcopal bishop, for instance, unless a rector commits some sort of ecclesiastical crime, cannot move a priest out of a church. He does not have that kind of authority
Right.
unless the priest has done something wrong. The church has a great deal of independence. A mission, however, was a church that could not afford a full-time minister, and historically the diocese helped support them. That ended some years ago because of diocesan finances, but the diocese always had direct authority over a mission. The bishop could select the clergy, remove the clergy. A vestry in a mission church was really only advisory, although our bishops now for a good long time have given missions pretty much the same independence as parishes unless there was some real controversy going on. But now in our diocese, we no longer have that distinction between parishes and missions, mainly because the diocese no longer helps financially support
Right.
the missions. The diocese does not have the funds. So those churches that were missions are now deemed parishes. And so St. Cyprian's and St. Andrews are two parishes of the Diocese of Georgia, both independent but work hand in glove. Now, one thing I didn't say, but should, St. Cyprian's is historically African American. Mm-hmm. Right now the vestry is still overwhelmingly African American, but the Sunday morning is exceedingly mixed and actually more probably more white than black on a Sunday morning. And the funny thing is it has to do with the music. It has to do with the music.
Hey, where's Jim Nord?
Yeah, I was going to say, he just
Oh,
let.
Nord. Hey, no, wait a minute.
No, many people aren't aware of this, but the Episcopal Church has 5 hymnals.
Yeah.
I suspect most people here think that there's only one hymnal. It's that blue book, and it says 1982 on it.
It's green.
There are 5 different hymnals,
Yep.
and one of them is called Lift Every Voice and Sing. It is a hymnal for the African American churches in the Episcopal Church, not just for them. What's interesting is those hymns, so many of them, are what are sung in Southern Protestant churches. Episcopal Church is Protestant, but particularly Baptist and Methodist churches. So if people come to Darien and they're looking for a church, and we all know people are not as tied to denominations as much as they once were.
Yeah.
That's right.
Like
they're
I'll
not.
be a Baptist for life, or a Presbyterian for life, or Episcopalian for life. So if they try other churches, and if they come from a Baptist or Methodist background and they go to St. Cyprian's, they say, I know that music.
Yep.
That speaks to me more than the more traditional, you might almost say English choral music that we have in the 82 hymnal. So that's as much the reason why people choose St. Andrews or St. Cyprian's, is the difference in the music. Services are the same. The sermons were the same. Although I will say this, it is said about a sermon that the preacher is to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And I will say at times, depending upon the topic, the sermon might have comforted one parish and afflicted the other.
Well, that's a tough balance for me. It required a learning curve to figure that one out.
You just have to realize how people are going to receive the message.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Allison, did you just go to one, or did you go back and forth, or what'd you do?
In the beginning, I went to both every Sunday, and I would kind of go back and forth. One was at 9, one was at 11:15, and sometimes I mainly went to St. Andrews, but in recent year or so, I was going more to St. Cyprian's. It just depended, and I figured, people, if I wasn't at one church, I was going to the other. And if I'd never gone to church, no one would ever know. But I always,
point.
and being married to Ted, you're going to be in church every Sunday. And I was in church every Sunday, and I went to one or I went to the other. And felt perfectly at home, loved both of them.
And we had some people who did just bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
As I say, people were comfortable in either church. Both members of both churches were comfortable in the others, and there were a couple times a year when we had joint services. But it's very important to maintain the separate identities.
Yeah.
The Episcopal Church does not have a large African American population, but it has always had a focus on folks of both races. And in the South here, we think of it in terms of binary. We obviously, in different places, there would be other considerations. Many people aren't aware that in 1850, in South Carolina, there were more Episcopalians of color than there were white.
Wow.
The Episcopal Church always had. And what's the first school sponsored by Good Shepherd?
Weed? Is that?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, no, it actually was not Weed. I'm an alumnus of Weed, by the way. Those who don't know Weed, is now known as Sandhill Psycho Elementary School.
Right.
Sorry, it was not known as a Psycho Elementary School when I was there. No, Good Shepherd, in the late 1800s, founded a school for African American children because what local government was doing for African American children in education was deficient. St. Cyprian's had a school too, starting from almost that time, and one of its first teachers was Deaconess Alexander.
Really?
It was
Yeah.
founded by her sister, interestingly enough, But Deaconess Alexander, first real teaching job was at St. Cyprian's, interestingly enough. But Good Shepherd,
You
long
might tell everybody.
who Deaconess Alexander
Right,
is?
yes.
All right. The Episcopal Church views sainthood a little differently than a lot of people are aware of, and I know that's been discussed here. But we, in the Episcopal Church, name some people who we think are examples, whose lives that we need to follow and emulate as best we can. So we pick them not because they're necessarily in heaven any quicker than anybody else, but they are the lives that are the examples for us. And the Episcopal Church has, it redid its calendar of saints, known as Lesser Feasts and Fasts. It redid it at the last General Convention. And although she'd been listed in another group called Holy Women, Holy Men, but Anna Ellison Butler Alexander, born on one of Pierce Butler's plantations, probably as a slave, but we don't know exact her birth date, but right around the end of the Civil War. She and her family moved to a little community called Pinnock, which is outside of Brunswick. Her father had been educated by Fanny Kimball and had a great deal of responsibility in the plantations, even though he was a slave. When the slaves were freed, they managed to buy some land and a number of other slaves in a very undesirable area of Glenn County, and they set up their own community. And Anna, his oldest sister, married an Episcopal clergyman. His name was Mr. Mann, and Mr. Mann was one of the early rectors of St. Cyprian's. And Deaconess Alexander, she's called Deaconess Alexander because she first started a little church in Pinnock, then ultimately started a school there. During this same time, she taught at her sister's school at St. Cyprian's. She was ordained a deaconess in the Episcopal Church. In those days, back actually until 1976, the ordained ministry was limited to men in the Episcopal Church. But there were some women who were set aside as deaconesses. Just like we also had nuns. I mean, people here know about the convent of St. Helena. It's still set aside, but they were not technically ordained, and they were called deaconesses rather than deacons. By the way, the Episcopal Church now, on its records, recognizes all those deaconesses as deacons. She did remarkable work in Pinnock. It is said that she depopulated Pinnock one student at a time. She literally carried her students off to college.
Yeah.
And Pinnock, Good Shepherd Pinnock, which is the name, interestingly, Good Shepherd. It still exists. It only has services about twice a month, because Pinnock hardly exists anymore. It's just a historical dot on a map. But her life and her example is really extraordinary. There's a lot on the diocesan website about her. And so she is a saint of the Episcopal Church coming out of the Diocese of Georgia. So she was really remarkable. But in any event, the Episcopal Church recognized after the Civil War that there was a need for education for the black children who had been denied such under slavery, and that the public education, to the extent that it was being offered to black children, was deficient. So the first school started by Good Shepherd was not the Episcopal Day School.
Right.
I don't think it has a name. And because of that school, the first rector of the Episcopal of Church of Good Shepherd, Father Weed,
Right.
when the public school system here in Richmond County established a public school for black children on the hill. It's over on Mount Auburn Street, right behind William Robinson School, which of course is not even a school anymore. It was named for who eventually became Bishop Weed. He's the Bishop of the Diocese of Florida.
Right.
So it's interesting that we had a school until recently in this county named for the first rector of Good Shepherd because of his establishing a school, church school, for black children in this area.
Right.
So
That's a remarkable history, and you say, wow, how does Ted know all of that? Well, you don't get to be a saint in the Episcopal Church just because somebody put your name in. It was an arduous, I wouldn't say battle, but it was an arduous task for how many years? Since
many years, I would say well over a dozen years. First was named as a saint in the diocese, and then it was advocated by the Association of Deacons in the Episcopal Church, because she was the first, and some say the only black deaconess in the Episcopal Church. I'm not too sure about that particular fact. And on behalf of the Diocese of Georgia, because her life, the way she lived it, and her dedication really was extraordinary. Matter of fact, I still had, they're no longer in life, but two of the parishioners at St. Cyprian's when I came there had gone to school under Deaconess Alexandra.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Ted was very instrumental in leading this whole task over those many years, and this once it gets to the General Convention, then you have to continue to push that along. So, and Ted, because he has been going to General Convention as a clergy deputy, for many, many years, was able to do that along with others were involved with that. And that just emphasizes that Ted hadn't just been hanging out on his boat in Darien all these years
Much as I
and
would
giving
like
a few
to.
sermons. He's been extremely active in the diocese and in the national church for all those years and everything, and very productive and very committed to it. And Allison is just not sitting there at the house making apple pies all the time there. She's been very much involved, is very much involved in the diocese, and is a former lay rector of Cursillo.
Yes, I
that
did
was
that.
Cursillo number
I did 118.
118. Cursillo has been a very powerful ministry in the Diocese of Georgia since 1976. Is that right?
I think that's right.
And Allison's been a part of that, and then eventually over time her leadership skills were recognized, and she was made the lay rector, which is a tough job. Any of y'all that have been to Cursillo and see, or been on teams and everything, know how all that works.
Now, Allison also was on the Cursillo Commission of the diocese for many years.
That's right, she was. She was on that. I just got put on that thing. I said, "Holy
Oh, I'm
mackerel."
sorry.
Maybe you could pass the torch back to Allison.
But Sissy and I, Sissy was a lay rector, and I was too, a long, long time ago. But Cursillo was very important to us, and Cursillo, like so many things, has a strong lifespan, and then I don't know, it loses some energy, and then over time, and so we're trying to rebuild that.
We're trying.
Allison and Ted, and I know both of y'all are strongly supportive of that. So I hope that over the year ahead that we can redo that with your support and leadership and experience to bring Cursillo back into the Church of the Good Shepherd, which at one time here it was strong. We had, I mean, in fact, the whole convocation, Augusta convocation, was strong in Cursillo. And those of you that are listening in that remember that, you know exactly how much we did. We did a lot of good. We had a lot of fun too.
Yes.
Because Ted was talking about the music, which is not 1982 hymnal in Darien. The Cursillo music is taken a lot from Lift Every Voice. I mean, we did a lot of those Cursillo songs, and they're, which I really like. I guess I have some DNA in me that's Pentecostal, I guess, maybe.
You've got the music in you.
I got
that's
the
for sure.
music in, I got the rhythm.
The spirit is there,
Yes,
Joe.
the spirit is there.
The spirit is there, and for the Epiphany season, it is manifest.
What I want to, I have to give a shout out to Steph Britt, because you mentioned Steph. And Steph was also very instrumental, even before I had even thought about becoming a priest, in continuing to, I won't say push, but to dangle that in front of me, So one thing I'd like to know, I remember, of course, y'all being here before. Ted did a will for me one time when he was an attorney. And I have so many pleasant memories of Allison being back in the kitchen and being a part of all of that. What did y'all think when the bishop said, how would y'all like to go to Augusta? Were y'all just overjoyed, or? I mean, I know
I'll let
you're
Allison
saying,
answer that. I think she's got one word.
Yes. We're kind of blown away by that thought of that. So yeah,
well, raising your children.
we're gonna look
here.
into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'd already decided. I mean, Augusta is home, a home for me from birth, from Allison when she moved here at 15, or maybe you might have been 14 when you actually moved here, yeah. We decided in all likelihood we were going to retire in Augusta. So that...
I decided that we were going to retire Augusta.
Make that clear.
We didn't
I
know.
would like to introduce
we
you to
didn't
the
know
new
when
rector
that
of the
would
Church of the Good
be.
Shepherd,
We didn't know when that would be, but that was my thought.
Yeah.
We didn't know where we would be. You never know where you're going to be.
We had an understanding that she'd followed me into the ministry and she was going to decide where we were going to spend our retirement. And Augusta was that was our operative
That's
choice.
what we thought.
And
That was a fair deal, too.
So
Yeah.
to come back here now it was, as some people say, a God thing. It worked out just fine. I don't know whether I'll be fully retired at the end of 3.5 years here, but I will be 66, and will probably be retiring from the idea of, I doubt I would take another church as rector, maybe
Right.
as an interim work, but I would never take another church as rector. So it really worked out. It was a win-win deal, is basically what I would say it was.
But certainly for us, and I think it was a God thing too, the way it just kind of seamlessly happened, and I don't say the stars were aligned, but everything seemed to be, I guess all the holes in the Swiss cheese were lined up or something like that. And Ted mentioned 3.5 years. The usual way a church goes about its transition from a long-term rector to a new permanent rector is called interim or transition. Sometimes you have a priest in charge. But the rule of thumb is, okay, how long should we take to get us a new permanent rectors? And I don't know who came up with this formula, but it's like a year for every 10 or something like that.
I don't know. It really can vary a great deal.
Yes.
But the longer the prior rector served, generally the thought is the longer the time you need space between the call of a new permanent rector. Furthermore, there's a lot of work a congregation does in trying to fully understand itself, to look at where it has been, where it is, where it wants to be. Those things that take time. And right now, that work can't even begin.
Right. Cannot.
Yeah.
As long as we are in this pandemic situation, the church can't even begin that process. So the bishop and Robert, and of course consulting the vestry also, felt that this needed to be longer. Normally I would say, with a reasonably long pastorate, you're looking at usually 18 months to 2 years. Right. But they've added the length of time because, number one, we can't even get started with a lot of the work. We'd be very fortunate, and I pray for it, in 6 months that we could be back. I know that my view of 6 months is considered outrageously over-optimistic by others. And thank you, other. So we just don't know, but it's going to be a while. So that's taking that time into.
Oh, Roger, what have you got for us?
Well, it just seemed like a good segue to what you're saying. There was a question about how's Father Fain and where is he going? How did his retirement end up? And can you guys give us an update on where that is?
Well, I can tell you some. I've spoken to Robert, and I suspect Joe has, and
Yes,
Buddy
indeed.
have too.
Yeah.
He is looking to buy a house in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And until he does that, he is still around here in Augusta. He is retired. Right now, he is not working in any other church. He has certainly earned his retirement, friends and neighbors. I can speak to that. You all have seen him for 37 years, and I saw him for a lot of that. But those of us in the work of the ordained ministry to know how incredibly hard Robert worked.
Oh, absolutely.
I used to call him the hardest working man in the
24/7,
preacher
365,
business. Yeah.
So he should be taking his time off. I know my father, who was here for 37 years, for almost between 6 months and a year after he retired here, he worked on laying a brick driveway, brick by brick by brick, at the house on Walton Way. He did physical manual labor for a year before he could even think about going and filling in and being supply clergy elsewhere, which is what he did for the rest of his life. So Robert is here until he finds a place in Hendersonville. And Hendersonville is undergoing an extraordinary real estate boom. It's Hendersonville, Asheville area.
It is exploding up there. It is the place to go now.
So it's not easy to find a house to buy in the current market. So that's where he's waiting on.
But there's good news in here. He has closed on his house on William Street. And as he talked to him yesterday or the day before, and he said, the check is in the bank. So that is a great thing to have lifted up off of anybody that is moving it. Have y'all sold in Darien yet?
No, Darien is not moving that fast.
There is an opportunity in Darien.
There is.
And does the boat go with the house?
It can.
We can do that.
That is negotiable. Sailboat, I might add.
Yeah, Ted's quite a sailor. When he was here back in the day and everything, we'd go out on his sailboat. And my last memory of one of our trips out on the sailboat, he just took his glasses off. I saw him do that.
I know what he's
triggered
gonna
that
say.
memory. We were jumping in the water and all that kind of stuff and swimming and having a good time. And then, I don't know which side of the clear blue sky, Ted jumps in the water with his glasses on. Now, these are expensive prescription glasses, and sunk to the bottom of Clark's Hill at the time it was that. And I don't even think you bothered to dive for it, did you? Did you
Oh,
try?
no, there'd be no hope where we were.
And he gets in the boat and he says, will you hand me my glasses? And I said, you went in with your glasses
A
on.
lot smarter since those days. when we were out on Clark
He's done it a couple of times.
Hill. Roger.
Sissy just commented about Allison being involved in the clergy spouse group. You want to talk about that a minute?
Yeah, talk about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have a wonderful clergy spouse group led by Jay Lacey. She is her husband is Lonnie Lacey from St. Anne's Tifton, and we get together as a group once a year at Honey Creek. In between, we gather in smaller groups where we live. And Jay is just our wonderful, wonderful leader. We have Helen White, who helps us spiritually. We have Jerry Nelson that helps us spiritually. And we get together and we just have a ball. We share our stories and hear and listen to one another. And it's just been the most wonderful thing for our diocese.
You don't talk about your husbands, do you?
We don't have time for that.
If there is a harder job than serving as an ordained clergy person,
Yeah.
it is being the spouse
Absolutely.
of an ordained
Yeah.
clergy person. It is
Yeah.
a very challenging job. And Allison, along with Jay Lacey and
And Sissy
Sissy
and
and
Leslie Parker, we do
Kelly
a
Ben
lot
Hayes,
so-
who's very
Kelly,
much
yeah.
Bishop Ben Hayes' wife, really have put that group together and made it function. It's not always been here in the diocese, and it is. They are of great help to each other.
Yes.
I have a question for Ted, and I'm thinking maybe some other people might be wondering this too. How does it feel to come back here to Good Shepherd, where your father was the beloved rector for, so long, 37 years, started the day school. How did,
Intimidating. If you've noticed, I missed the prayer on in a couple of the services. I missed one of the closing prayers, and that's because my brain is still going 1,000 miles an hour. It is quite a special opportunity, and I am somewhat overawed by that. I don't mind saying that, and but I am enjoying it immensely, even if I'm just really in the. Well, Robert and I have been working together for several months in this transition, but just now really getting into the full-time swing of it.
Just looking at time, so we have to end at 9:55 to make room for the 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well,
That's
time
good.
flies when you're having fun,
that's
doesn't it?
right. That's
It
right.
really does. Well, I know everybody out there and everybody at Good Shepherd is just plain excited that Ted and Allison are now official because you got the keys.
That's right.
I don't know if you've gotten a check
He looks
yet or
like
not. I
Captain
guess that really
Kangaroo.
makes it official, but
No checks yet. Y'all want to see me work first before any checks come.
and just looking so forward to the time ahead. And these are difficult, crazy difficult times, but to have Ted and Allison's leadership, and they will need a ton of support. And you mentioned happiness that was at Darien, both churches there. Good Shepherd's a happy place.
It is.
I've always found it to be that. It is a place of joy, and why is it so happy? It's just, I think it's love. I think Robert has led us to Jesus Christ, and all who have helped him with that, and we love each other. We take care of each other, and Good Shepherd's just a place of I don't know. It's always been a place for me where I have found Jesus Christ, and I also find Jesus at Fripp too. Don't get me wrong; he didn't hang here all the time. But you're coming into some tough times. So everybody out there, we'll continue to put this. We all need your clergy, Ted, Allison. Every one of us, Roger, Emily. Everybody needs continued support, and things may happen where services are, who knows what's going to happen. But we're going to continue as we have in the past. We're pledged to stay engaged as best we can, and you stay engaged with us. And we'll continue to contact you with notes, phone calls, virtual, e-blast, everything that we can just kind of stay together. And we want to hear from you. We want to know what we can do to kind of hold the line, hold the fort while we're trying to get through this. I hope Ted is prophetic and says 6 months. It's just a big question mark. But
No one knows.
But heck, gang, it's, what is it now? 11 months? 10 months?
10.
We our last in-person
March
March
13th.
service was March the 15th,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
That was it. And then they had that time there until October the 4th, where we started limited, I guess, worship light, whatever you want to call it there. But the virus is going crazy, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Anyway, welcome. We got one. If you got it, say it in 30 seconds.
Just remember, please, if you know of anyone that needs a note or a
Yes.
phone call or anything, you're welcome to call us, call Andy, or call the office.
Me, anybody.
And we want to do that. One of the things about Good Shepherd, I think, is, you mentioned love, is that we are able here to see the face of Jesus in one another.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that Ted and Allison are going to continue to lead us towards Christ, and we're so happy you're here. And Joe, you want to?
Happy. I'm happy as I could be, particularly since I get to give what little job I had in this interim to your new rector, interim rector there. All right, everybody, we love you. We miss you. Give me a phone call, just whatever. Send me some money. I don't care. Anyway, bye-bye.